Our next guest happens to be an author of the book Thomas Paine. He is a lifetime of radicalism, a liberty zealot, a Packers fan, a meathead, a metalhead. I said meathead. Well, he's a Packers fan. He's more of a cheesehead. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him in from the Mises Party caucus. David Benner, the nemesis of neocons, is on the show. How you doing, brother?
Great, Craig. Great intro. And I might be a meathead now because I looked at your avatar and I need some penne or rigatoni or something now, man.
Well, you know, I always ask. It's kind of funny because I got to speak to a couple people when I met Chase Oliver, and he might have been the presidential candidate for maybe 15 minutes. I got a hold of him, one of his first interviews, and he says, it's all about the fettuccine. I'm like, well, I'm glad to know that you're into it. Sometimes it could be about the bucatini. You know, Thomas Massey laughed at the name, but what is your favorite pasta, David?
Oh, man, it's so tough. I'm kind of a rigatoni guy, but, man, I like fettuccine too, though, so I'll go with those two.
See, I knew there was something really good about you when I met you. Rigatoni, that's one of my favorites too as well. If I have a bolognese, if I have a vodka sauce, I like to go with the rigatoni. It always depends on the sauce for me. If I do seafood, I'm usually hitting the linguine, but it all depends. I can do other pastas. I can sometimes do angel hair. But not only are you good looking, you got a good taste for pasta as well. I want to hold this up really quickly because I got these at your convention. You are a libertarian. Let's talk about some libertarian values and some ways. The reason why I ended up at the convention, I was covering it as a journalist, of course, but there was a sense of unity between anti-imperialist leftists and libertarians. We had the Rage Against the War Machine. We had people like Jimmy Dore, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampel share the stage with people like Daniel McAdams, Ron Paul, Scott Horton. So there was already this kind of like coalition of sorts. So I kind of ended up at your convention, and I can tell you this much. It was one of the most nuanced, awesome conversational conventions I've ever been to. We had so many talks about what it meant to be a libertarian, some of the values, but mostly about the things we agreed on. Anti-war, freedom of speech, freedom of a press. I want to play something for you right now because I'm a little confused. Breaking the convention, there are people, well-known libertarians, that are toying with the fact, because they weren't happy with the results, of voting for Donald Trump. That really upsets me. I want to play something for you right now, and I want to play Donald Trump when it comes to his statements on Israel. Take a listen to this, and you tell me, Dave, how could anybody call themselves a libertarian and think about voting for this guy? Here we are, Pasta to Go, guys, with Dave Benner. Go check him out. This is Donald Trump.
So, number one, they have to finish the job. Israel has to finish that job. They have to finish it quickly, strongly, and they have to get back to life again because it's taking too long. They have to finish the job.
You're saying go in, win, and finish.
You got to win. Got to win. The attack on October 7th, and it's getting more and more demeaned. They're demeaning it. I have people now telling me they don't think the attack ever happened. And take a look. You watch the news reports.
I have the
where
50
people
minutes
that are
of video.
protesting. Sure, I know you do, and so do I. But here's the thing. You watch these people on television, and then just like you have Holocaust deniers also. They say the Holocaust never took. It's the exact same people. They're saying it never happened. AOC +3. You know, Israel was the most powerful lobby in the country 15 years ago. Today, between Tlaib and AOC and all of these people, what they're doing, Israel, they don't have the backing that they once had.
You'll give it to them.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. But they don't have the backing. Even Schumer has become like a Palestinian. Chuck Schumer, Jewish, always strong for Israel. He's become like a Palestinian.
He called for elections in the middle of a war.
Yeah, it's a very bad thing. It's a very sad thing, and it's a very dangerous thing. But if you look, so many people, I watch on your show where they're going and interviewing these people that are protesting just recently at Columbia and the different places. They say, we don't believe October 7th ever happened. And they may believe that, you know, they may actually believe that, but they have to get the job done. They have to get in there and they have to get it done.
David, he talks so much stuff right there. That's such a loaded clip. You're talking about funding the war machine, right? Not being pro-Israel enough, not being imperialistic enough. You're talking about them losing power as lobbyists, reassuring that you're going to allow lobbyists to come in and control your government. And then even to kind of mention the sprinkle of the what's going on the campus, being okay with suppressing freedom of speech. That's what he's talking about. He's code for saying that I would shut down these speeches because they're pro-Hamas. They are terrorists. Terrorism talk, when it comes to the conservatives, it's the left's version of hate speech, right? We hate when people say we're going to shut you down because of hate speech, because who defines what hate speech is? I learned that from the libertarians when it came to my civil liberties, and that's why I've kind of peeked in the door. How could any libertarian whatsoever, Dave, think about voting over this guy, for this guy, Donald Trump, over your candidate, Chase Oliver? Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there and a lot of absurdities, but to me, like, nothing was more absurd than him saying that the Israel lobby isn't as powerful as it used to be. It's by far the most powerful compared to like the past. And you can see that. I mean, they've successfully linked non-intervention, like America First MAGAism that he's supposed to be for, with anti-Semitism. It's insane. The ruling class has basically conflated those two terms and tied them together such that people are afraid to oppose this stuff. But to your question, Craig, I won't vote for him, but I think different libertarians have different priorities. You'd be surprised. Some people would prioritize, like, the monetary system or the central bank or the taxing apparatus far above Israel. I'm not one of them. I think that war and non-intervention is like the most important thing. But the libertarians that would consider it might be enticed by his promises, which I don't know will come to fruition, to free Ross vis-a-vis the sign you had, and to put libertarians in his cabinet. And the third thing he promised was to abolish the Department of Education, which I'm the most skeptical of that. I think there's no chance of that happening. But hopefully I broke it down a little bit for you.
Well, I mean, I do understand some of your points, and I think it should be a consolation prize, right? This here, if in fact we don't move the needle, let's be honest now, Chase Oliver's not going to win. We know that, right? He's not a populist candidate. And I said this, I questioned Angela, hey, do you look at this as a missed opportunity, being that the Libertarian Party has established himself as the third party? You have Donald Trump coming to court, you Vivek Ramaswamy showing up, RFK. I thought all this stuff was genius. Thomas Massey showed up, right? I mean, so don't you look at this as a missed opportunity with your candidate? Okay, yeah, you could say that, right? Because a lot of people, and you had mentioned on Tim Cass the other day, that Dave Smith was supposed to take that nomination. Everybody counted on him taking that nomination. I even pushed the, hey, Smith Dorr 24, take Jimmy Dore on as your vice president, and let's really get the message of anti-war out there, right? The same coalition we had on the stage. Yeah, we're not going to agree on economics. We can get into that discussion at a later time. Yeah, we're not going to agree on private property, and I would like one day for you to come back on, because we have too much things to talk about, Dave, to explain to me how, if I'm for universal health care or some form of Medicare for all, or Medicare as a human right, how that somehow makes me not believe in private property. I don't know. I was told that at the convention. I don't want to go too deep down the hole. But, you know, why not form the coalition if the starting point is libertarians, anti-imperialist left, no war. We're not going to intervene. We're going to curtail the CIA. I had Thomas Massey there. I asked him if he would blame the reason for the migration at the border on our foreign policy the way I do and the way a lot of libertarians do. He said, no, it's about the welfare state. But at the end of the day, he still was, no, I'm going to still curtail the CIA. I'm going to kick them out of there and stop them from doing their wars if he was, you know, in charge. And he thinks the sanctions are bullshit because it's only hurting the American dollar. So we still have the same solution. It's still an anti-imperialist, anti-intervention solution. But, you know what I'm saying? We're still there. But how in the world can we sit there and go, hey, man, Donald Trump is better, even when we have a guy like Chase saying, no war, we're going to pull out, we're not going to get involved. I just can't. For me, it's really hard to understand that, because I think Chase Oliver's job was not to win, but what I was saying before, it's to move the needle. It's to get the message out there of libertarianism. Because to me, when you talk about the libertarian ideology, and I know I'm going on, it's a way of politically abstract thinking. We're programmed to think that we have to obey the state and stay within their parameters. Libertarian says, no, it's within the person. It's within the sovereign, you know, persons. That's who we should be taking our orders. That's who should be making the rules. In some ways, you guys are right.
Yeah, no, I think you make great points on war. And to Chase's credit, I think he has been reasonably good on war, at least in the campaign. Although I will say, I don't think that he would acknowledge like abolish NATO or that NATO provoked the war in Ukraine and things like that. But I do think that he's stuck to mostly a non-interventionist line. The only thing that makes me question it since the campaign is a few days ago, he did send a campaign mailer that explicitly encouraged private donations to Ukraine. So while libertarians don't want the government to ban that, private donations to Ukraine, I don't want our presidential candidate advocating for that. That's led to the deaths of thousands of conscripts on both Russia and Ukrainian side. So that makes me a little bit concerned. I think he's been better on Israel by far than Kennedy. Don't get me wrong, but I think like Kennedy's been better on Ukraine than Chase. So there's some things that make us question how much he'll stick to the nomination LP mantra that he was spreading compared to what he's targeting for the general election. I have reason to believe it will be a little bit different.
See, that does make me concerned too as well. To tell you the truth, the part about Chase that made me most suspicious was his tweets on Donald Trump praising him when he got the platform. That made me nervous. I'm like, wait a second, you're a libertarian. You're supposed to be pushing back against any form of censorship, right? So that's big. Let me ask you a question about immigrants and how they are in the economy. What is the standard immigrant position when it comes to libertarians? Because people on the stage, including some of your Mises Caucus members, people like Josh Smith, people like Mike Rechtenwall, I didn't like their position on immigration as much as I liked Mike Termott's position on immigration. What is the standard libertarian position when it comes to the border and immigration?
Well, this is the hardest question ever, Craig, because libertarians are very split on this issue. And you probably realize that. I can kind of sense that about you. But the libertarian platform calls essentially, without wording it this way, for open borders, for free migration, that the state doesn't intervene in any way. Now, on the campaign trail, you're right. Like Chase Oliver disseminated a view of like an Ellis Island style immigration system. Rechtenwald and Josh were generally what we would call Rothbardians or Hoppians on immigration, whereupon they essentially said, well, not everyone should have equal access to the commons. And, you know, an assault or open immigration leads to attacks on private property because those immigrants, you know, a large percentage of them will take from the welfare state, things like that. But the ultimate position of Rothbardianism and Hoppianism is to privatize the borders, just like all public land, and allow individual private property holders total discretion over who enters and goes outside of it. That's generally my view. It's a radical view. But where there is a state, libertarians really diverge, whether they want open borders or closed borders. And still other libertarians think that, you know, that's the wrong argument. This should be kicked down to the states because of federalism. States controlled those policies before 1875 as it is. And really the question comes down to private property or, you know, shared commons. So it's such a complicated issue among libertarians, Craig, but we're really divided on that.
I think you guys are divided on abortion too, and that's why they didn't even bring it up. I remember Angela saying we're not going to even go touch that because when it comes to libertarians, that can get really off the charts. Why does Donald Trump, from people like Tim Pool, other people like him, why does he get so much credit for the economy? I mean, I get that Joe Biden has not done well for the economy, but nothing in the workforce really changed, right? I mean, we also have the CARES Act, in which President Donald Trump signed, and it gave more money to all the corporations, even his tax breaks. They had a record before Joe Biden just recently beat it. They had a record of stock buybacks by the companies from the people who got those tax breaks to begin with. So why does he get so much credit when he really didn't change anything? I mean, you can tip the hat and say when he did try to get a little bit kind of butt heads with China at one point, he was trying to bring manufacturing back home, but he never did. And I think that needs to be acknowledged more than anything. The other day, when they were going after Fauci, people weren't acknowledging this big pharma system in which a lot of libertarians can look at and say, it's the system itself. Big pharma, monopolies, they're the problems. That's why we want deregulation, because we don't want these guys cornering the market and making the rules. And we'll get back to we'll slide the big pharma thing. We'll talk about Chase and the libertarians and what they believe in private businesses when you hear the word free market forces. But why did Donald Trump get so much credit when he didn't really change anything in the economy? Why do you think people are pushing that? And isn't that a falsehood?
Oh, it's a total falsehood, and I totally agree with you, especially what you brought up about the CARES Act. I'm with you and Jimmy Dore and Dave Smith on this, that was the biggest historical transfer of wealth from the middle working class to the elites and to the military industrial complex and to big pharma and all the other corporate beneficiaries of it. I don't understand it, Craig, especially because that economy that they were so proud of in 2018, 2019 is built on an inflationary house of cards. Even before, the COVID regime and the lockdowns happened, the Federal Reserve was just cranking out dollars. It had printed out about half of the dollars that exist at the beginning of the lockdowns from like 2020 to 2021. And that always acts. Libertarian monetarists know this, that when you expand the money supply to that extent where you're printing half of the currency that now exists, it devalues the remaining currency. So it's all about the bankers. It's all about a financial house of cards that's doomed to crash. And what we're seeing now is just inflation that they can't control. Yeah. The Fed was considering lowering rates, and I think they're not going to necessarily lower rates anymore this year.
Yeah. And the Fed. And the Fed. Donald Trump ain't ended no Fed, and he ain't even mentioning the Fed. So like I said, there's going to be goods and bads with Chase Oliver, but I think it's worth going with. One of the reasons I'm a little suspicious about the Libertarians, though, the party itself, is their ability to admit when they are wrong about someone. And that person right now, which we didn't see too much buzz at the Libertarian Convention for, and I didn't bust Spike Cohen's chops about it, but Javier Milei. Javier Milei, look at this video we have over here, too. Look at this tweet, of Javier Milei. Javier Milei is a cuck. He gives libertarians a bad name, but yet they still praise this guy. We did see it. Malay government increases electricity and gas tariffs on the middle and low income households by more than 100%. This guy has been pro-Israel. He has been pro-Ukraine. He has allowed BlackRock to come in, not just take pictures with him, which everybody's pointing the finger at Claudia Scheinbaum and Larry Fink. Well, this guy has allowed BlackRock to come in and seize assets. This guy is going to take IMF loans. This guy is feeding the Fed. He is walking away from BRICS. And when you walk away from BRICS, you're walking into the Fed. Why won't libertarians admit that they have buyer's remorse with this guy?
And I'll tell you why, because I don't. And here's why. Okay, there's a lot of issues there. So first of all, he's delivered 4 straight months of lowered inflation when there was hyperinflation above 200% when he entered. 4 straight months of a budget surplus, which is unheard of. As far as Israel and Ukraine, I'm with you. If I was an Argentinian, I wouldn't like his opinions on those things. But he hasn't devoted a single cent from the public trough to either Israel or Ukraine. The closest thing I can find is he donated 2 helicopters that were essentially broken. They didn't pass safety inspections to Ukraine. And yeah, I would be against that, but he's not the head of the empire like he would be if he was president of the US. He's not running, a hawkish foreign policy like our neocons do. So no, I don't like his opinions there. As far as the tariffs, I know he did bring some tariffs back, but most of his administration has been slashing the government. He slashed half of their departments in Argentina and, ended the lucrative salaries for, corrupt politicians that were feeding off the public.
While increasing his own salary, right? While increasing his own salary tenfold, and he got caught with it. But why can't libertarians admit the fact that, okay, your ideology is cool, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I want to make a point here, and I'll let you go at it. You cannot end a welfare state just by cutting it off like that. You have to matriculate and slowly move out of it, because if you do that, too many people who depend on those services, and that's what's going in Argentina, and they're in the streets about that because you say the inflation, but they have all their services cut, right? People who are dependent on the government. Why can't you just easily work your way out of it? Why does the whole thought process of doing this when so many are suffering and they're in the streets in Argentina? Why is it okay to do that? Why can't we reach a compromise and say we have to slowly move out of it, not just go and castrate it really quickly? Go right ahead.
Well, Craig, this is where we're probably just going to diverge. I think half-assing it or reforming it has eventually led Argentina to where it is over the course of a few decades, and trying to, ease in anti-corruption legislation under the Kirchners, etc. Now, raising his salary, he didn't do that. What happened was bureaucrats that were in his administration, one bureaucrat in particular, he made a rule that took away a previous prohibition on raising it. And once it was caught, Milei was actually really upset about it and reversed it right away. So I think that's a fallacy.
All right, we'll agree to disagree. I think that he got caught with his hand in his cookie jar and he reversed his stance right away. That's what I saw, but we could be we don't know the facts. We don't speak the language, so maybe we don't know. But anyways, you know what? I'll give you the Larry Sharp pass. Let's see what happens in a couple years. We'll see what comes out of it. I think it's a disaster. I think the foreign policy votes and the moving away from BRICS, there's no way he's going to take huge IMF loans. He's going to buy into a currency, no matter if you're all right, let's put that aside. Let's put Malay aside. We'll agree to disagree because I got limited time with you. I don't want to keep you here. Let's talk about Chase Oliver. Let's talk about your candidate coming out of this. I got Rechtenwald as he came off the floor. He was really, really upset. But the thing that bothers me now is that instead of going behind closed doors and working out their beef, a lot of people are threatening to jump ship, right? Like, one of our friends, and I don't want to, he's not here to defend himself, but he made a tweet. I think this whole weekend is a conspiracy to get me to vote for Donald Trump. I was like, what? I thought this whole weekend was a conspiracy to get me to vote for Chase Oliver, despite the things I disagree with him on. Because what I saw was one of the most democratic processes, and I've been to many democratic events and conventions. And all those conventions that I went to, David, you already knew who they were choosing. There was no up for grabs. Why can't a lot of libertarians just accept the fact that the guy who campaigns the hardest, who knocks on the most doors, the guy who campaigned in 50 states, the guy who won the debate this weekend, why can't they just admit, like, hey, we lost. Let's go over there, shake their hands, yell behind closed doors, then get out there as a united force? I mean, Mike Rechtenwald also had a situation, and I'm not bringing this up to rub it in his face, but he had a Joe Biden moment, and he took an edible before he went on stage, and people were just like, huh? And this happened at the most important time. Jamie, you want to bring it up, please? The most important time. Here's the article. President Hopeful admits eating weed gummy before his remarks. This thing was damaging to him. This weekend, when stuff was on the line, a lot of people, and even when Mike Termont, where a lot of people are saying he promised an endorsement to stick with Rechtenwald. Maybe he saw what was going on and said, you know what, I'm changing on the fly. This guy, Chase, is a much more serious candidate right now. He got 81,000 votes in the Senate race in Georgia, forced the runoff, and he won the debate here. He was on the debate stage with him. I'm going with this guy. Why can't they just take their medicine and come through a united front? Go ahead.
It's a lot of factors, so I'll give Chase all that. He did run a very serious, tough campaign in many states, but really it comes down to priorities, Craig, because Chase has what a lot of libertarians consider to be very disqualifying views. Not necessarily in war, but he's for very controversial things among libertarians like puberty blockers, and he's for reparations. I know that that's not as controversial among the left, but it is libertarians. He also pushed COVID regime propaganda at the height of the COVID regime, where he essentially said, mask up, and I'm going to Thanksgiving dinner with less than 10 people. He basically chided people for having a problem with vaccine cards. Like, he did a lot of things, Craig.
What was the second word you said after puberty blockers?
He's for reparations. He's noted that he's for reparations.
All right.
So it's a combination
of questions.
It's a combination. Let me just round up one more thing and just say, so it's a combination of things, but the Libertarian Party is basically a philosophy built upon individualism. So it really shouldn't be that surprising that individuals will have different opinions, dissenting opinions on our candidate. It's a storied tradition. In 2008, no one loved Bob Barr, it seemed like. In 2016, a lot of people hated Bill Weld, and for good reason. He endorsed Hillary Clinton during the campaign. So there's a lot of reasons. I hope that kind of answers it.
And I'm sorry to cut you off because I'm just so anxious. I was so anxious and waiting for this conversation because I knew we'd have a great conversation because I had so many great conversations in the convention. All right, number one, he's not for puberty blockers. Let's put that on the table. He is for what libertarians are for. Parental rights. The state doesn't have a right to tell you what to do. It's the parents that have a right to tell you what to do. His views are different than his ideology. And how do I know this? Because I asked him a question, and we're going to play it right now. I asked him a question about gain of function. Would you ban it if you were the president? And he said, I won't have, as the state, I won't ban anything. I think it's more important we tap into libertarian buzzword, free market forces, and we curtail what they're doing, right? We don't necessarily, we allow them to do it, but the government can't ban anything. So I don't think he's for puberty blockers. I think his views are different than his ideology. He's for parental rights, and that's a big libertarian thing. Reparations. He's not so much for the sin of the white man. It's for contracts. It's for unpaid labor, right? That's a type of reparations different. It's a work issue. It's a labor issue. It's not a race issue. And then finally, the third one was for the man for masking up. Yeah, there is something to look at the fact that you were duped. But I don't believe if he was a president of the United States, he would have had mandates. I believe, once again, his views are different than his ideology. And you're talking to a guy who was anti-COVID, everything across the board, pushback, got demeaned as a leftist and stuff. I don't think, and he did come around a little bit later, I don't think he would have ever pushed to have mandates because he's a libertarian, and the ideology is what's more important now than his views, and it's solid ideology. It aligns. Libertarians align much more aligned. They're much more aligned with Chase Oliver than they will be with Donald Trump any day of the week. It's mind-blowing to me that any serious libertarian would think about voting for Donald Trump and would bail on what the Mises Party has done now. You got to also understand, Dave, you got to run an election in 4 years. You're going to go for this seat again. You got to learn from your mistakes and say, all right, we got to make sure we get a candidate out in front early going. Is going to be a viable candidate. He's going to work the room. He's going to win the votes over and win. But that only works if you go across the way and you shake the hand and say, good game. Anti-Mises people, you beat us. Good game. Because they'll remember that and they'll be willing to vote for you in 4 years. If you play it like some of the people are playing it now, it's going to be more tension within the party. Your thoughts?
Okay, so going through these like one by one. So with the puberty blockers thing.
Gave you a lot. Sorry.
No problem. With the puberty blockers thing, a lot of people just view that, Craig, as child abuse. I know some people don't, but a lot of libertarians don't think that child abuse is between the parents and the child. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this position. And hey, a lot of libertarians are anarchists. We don't even want there to be a state-run criminal justice system. So just because the Fed or the state governments are involved in adjudicating criminal law and murder, that doesn't mean that we don't want that to, transpire. As far as reparations, he hasn't gotten into the complexities of which brand he believes in. The only thing I saw was a subtweet that talked about he backed what's called the negative income tax in libertarian circles, which is patently anti-libertarian to some people. And I'm really confused by, your opinion that his views are different than his ideology, but you won't apply that to Javier Milei, who has clear pro-Israel views, but he doesn't want to put any Argentine money to it. So I think
money, but he'll vote for it. There'll be votes and he will vote for some supporting Israel and whatnot when the votes come up. It's different. Right?
I don't think there ever will be votes for supporting Israel monetarily in Argentina, and I'll eat crow if I'm wrong. And I don't know that he would vote for them or pass them into law.
At the UN and all those votes we're talking about?
Yeah, I don't.
Wasn't there a vote to condemn or not condemn, and he voted with Israel, I believe, just recently, his administration? But I mean,
I don't know. You could be right, but
I don't want to.
You could be right about that one. Yeah.
Okay, so his views are different than his ideology is what I'm saying. Let me play you a video here. Did you see this video yet? My interview with Chase Oliver was 3 questions.
I did see the one, and I'm with him on the gain of function stuff, by the way.
All right, let's play this again for the audience to break it down, because once again, I'm with you. I wouldn't allow puberty blockers, and I would make sure that a child can't make a decision or, cut anything off until they're 18 years old. But at the end of the day, when you have this libertarian ideology that the parents make the decision, the final decision, I think we need to be consistent with that.
Doesn't apply to child abuse, Craig. When people think it's child abuse, they don't think that applies the same way.
People can make an argument that a child, the doctor says that needs to transition and they don't allow him to transition, can argue that it is child abuse. I'm making the libertarian argument for this, that the parent has the ultimate say. I don't know. Let's play the video. We'll get into it, Dave. Because I agree with you, though. And gain of function, I would ban on day one, even in the free market. It's gone. Here.
Hey, Chase.
Hello.
How you doing? I'm Craig Pasta, Jardula, independent media. My show's called Pasta to Go, just so you know. I'm not here to...
Pasta to Go. I like that.
So, Chase,
it's all about the fettuccine.
It is. Well, it could be the bucatini sometime, but now we know that you like fettuccine. Chase, you are now the Libertarian candidate for president of the United States. You're going to come out of this pretty much an unknown by a lot of people who are not inside the Libertarian Party. How do you make a splash for the Libertarian Party for those out there who don't know who Chase Oliver is?
Well, I think it requires energy, enthusiasm, and running a bold campaign that takes no prisoners, that says we must free ourselves from the warfare state and the abuses of this overly abusive and intrusive state as it currently exists. If we run true to our principles with energy, enthusiasm, and passion, we will wake people up. Know one thing about me, I'm not a politically connected elite. I'm not somebody who was born with a silver spoon in my mouth or has been in politics for the last 50 years. I know what it means to be someone who lives paycheck to paycheck in this life. I have lived the life that so many Americans are and that so many Americans are struggling to get ahead with. And I know we can do better as a country. And I urge you, if you're not a libertarian, to learn about the libertarians. Go to lp.org, check out our platform, and see that freedom is truly the answer to all of the ills that exist within our own government.
Chase, what do you tell an independent who's left-leaning that wants some Medicare for all system? It's completely against libertarian ideology, but how do you get those people who are so sick and tired of seeing people going bankrupt from medical bills?
I understand the need to help people who are suffering from healthcare abuses and the overcost of healthcare, but creating a one-size-fits-all single-payer plan will not solve that issue. In fact, it will stifle the innovation of our marketplace that allows these new medical technologies to emerge, that allows us to live longer, healthier lives. There are much better ways using free market forces and getting the government out of healthcare altogether that can ultimately lower the cost of healthcare for you and your family.
Chase, there's still a problem with a lot of entities that can still do gain-of-function testing. Will you ban gain-of-function testing on day one?
Well, you know, I will be banning on things. Let me just say this. I don't want the government to be investing in any medical research. I would rather the free market invest in those things, because ultimately they're going to be held more accountable than some unelected government bureaucrats who are possibly poisoning us with whatever they want to put in our bodies.
Last question, Chase. Mike turned Matt said he wanted to be your vice president. You guys had made that little kind of condition together, but the vice presidency ticket is going to run right now, just the same way he ran for the presidency. If you get somebody like a Larry Sharp or a Clint Russell, are you going to still campaign the same no matter what?
Well, I'm going to work hard no matter who my partner is, but I'm hoping that the delegates in the body will understand that Mike Tremont is the partner for me to really bring this message out, because there's no better message than saying somebody who is a police accountability activist partnering up with an ex-police officer who understands the need for accountability there. And so there's a great story to tell. I look forward to getting out with Mike Tremont across the country and spreading the message of liberty with passion, fire, and energy.
That's good. Good luck, sir. Thank you so much.
I wanted to see what he would say when I put him on the fly, because I knew nobody was going to ask him that question yet. That was before the vice president vote took place. I want to see how he can act on his feet. Somebody asked in the chat, why is he hesitating? Because I think, once again, the ideology over-trumped the views when it came to gain of function. Wait a second, let me pause. Even something that was so bad, it's still, the government can't ban anything. Your thoughts?
No, I'm going to give him credit. I think most of his answers were exceptional, with the exception of the last one. Tremont was a cop that practiced his qualified immunity to raid someone without a warrant and handcuff them. That is absurd. His other answers, I'm totally on board with. We know that government's corrupt with gain of research functionality, but libertarians believe that if you're not directly hurting someone, another person, that that behavior shouldn't be prohibited. Now, if it's the government forcing them to take a poisonous vaccine or some kind of drug, yeah, we have a problem with that, but not mere research that doesn't innately hurt another human being.
It could hurt a whole planet, and it's always
if you force it down their throats. But if it's voluntary, that's their choice. Just like crack, just like cocaine, just like heroin.
Yeah, see, this is where I struggle a little bit. Like I said, if I would have joined your party, I'd be in me and Jamie, who's Cheese Slice, who's the editor engineer who was there at the convention. We said if we joined the party, and we were very impressed by what we were seeing. But if we joined the party, we'd be in the bottom 5-10% of people, in that party because of our beliefs. You tell me that we can't allow our views to trump the ideology and the views, right? You made light of that when I said that, right? And kind of compared it to Malay. We look at puberty blockers as child abuse. And that's why we can say, okay, wait, we can kind of trump our ideology as far as the parents making the choice because it's child abuse. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that's consistency in ideology.
Which could be deadly for the planet. We can't make that same kind of crossover. Please go ahead and explain your point there.
Well, I think that the whole child abuse slash in its relation to puberty blockers is an extension of our philosophy that you're not allowed to hurt another person. That's against our beliefs, and that's in our platform in Plank 1.5. If you don't believe me, take a look at that. As far as, sorry, what was the other part of that?
We were talking about the gain of function, right? Like how we could.
Oh yeah, okay. So crack, like the mass application of heroin, crack, cocaine, etc., can also, you know, destroy a planet if the government forces those people to have it. But I think it's a victimless crime if someone does it voluntarily, and that's why I'm against the entire drug war, because the feds use that as an excuse to, you know, raid people that have, you know, small amount of legal resources to fight against it. And it's not, it's really a cultural issue rather than a criminal issue.
That's an interesting point. The last point I want to make, I want to ask you is a discrepancy I also have within the party. A lot of people within the party think that it's okay for the free market. And you talked about this a little bit with on Timcast the other day, that an employer can make it a mandatory for you to get a shot. Isn't the ultimate form of liberty personal sovereignty over one's body? So anybody trying to force me to do anything to my body should not be allowed. In other words, it should be a law that even the private sector says you can't, for you to work here, you have to take the shot, because the ultimate form of liberty is my own personal bodily liberty, my sovereignty, right? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's not, because you do own your body, and as an extension of that, you own all of your property, including your business, and you can set whatever criteria you want with employees on whether to join contractually. Now, if it's not in the contract and your employer fires you for that, and it explicitly says you can't be fired for refusing to take a vaccine, then that is an issue. But if the employee decides to get into a contractual relationship to trade their labor for, you know, wages, that employer can set whatever criteria you want, even if it's racist, even if it's things I don't like. And to the extent that they can't do that, they don't have private property. They don't have autonomy over their cells or their property.
See, these are the hard stretches. So I can make a contract that when you're done working for me, you have to jump off a cliff to get your pension at the end or something.
Yeah, who would sign that contract?
Nobody would. But I mean, why would they have
to? They might go out of business.
Dude, how is it any difference when you're taking what you believe to be a bioweapon to put in your system? That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The ultimate form of liberty and freedom is your own right to decide what you have to do with your own body. Yeah. To somebody to push that there, whether it be in a contract or not, I think should be a law and is breaking a law. That's just my personal opinion. I think this is where we differ. Yeah. And there are a lot of these areas. I think it's so unique and interesting right now that we can have these conversations because, you know, a global pandemic or a bioweapon or whatever the case may be, whatever you think it is, we never had to deal with these kind of questions before. So the libertarian and the isms, like what's going on in Hawaii right now, should the government step in and help these people who have been forced out of their homes from a fire? Or do we allow the free market to work itself out and somebody who owns a property in Maui can charge whatever they want, even if they're really harmful to the public? It's very unique. It's very intriguing. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming on the show. Please let everybody know where they can find you. Please come back on again. I'd love to have more of these conversations. Yeah. I truly had an amazing time at your convention. I really think what's going on there. I've asked a question, and maybe you can answer this question on the way out. Is the Libertarian Party the only really true vessel right now for we the people to have actual governance in our groups within we the people? Go ahead.
Well, people might be surprised, but I would say no. I don't know that, you know, all the progress has to be made through the vehicle of a political party in general or the Libertarian Party. I think like education programs and agorist approaches to exercise non-compliance and, you know, refuse to go along with the war propaganda and the CIA and all that is integral, and it doesn't have to be through the conduit of a party. Now, I do think the Libertarian Party is the party that most closely matches my philosophy. I will say, Craig, you're awesome, man. I love what you're doing. I love what the kind of the left-wing dissidents are doing to fight the war regime. Max Blumenthal, Jimmy Dore. I love Caitlin Johnston. I grew up reading Noam Chomsky and, you know, Mikhail Bakunin, if your audience can believe that. But, you know, no problem. We're on good terms regarding many issues regardless. If people want to look into me, you can find my books at www.davebenner.com or follow me at dbenner83. It's my pleasure, Craig. You're a great guy. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And I look forward to more fiery conversations, learning more about what's going on, finding ways we can compromise, slowing down the war machine, having a free press, and freeing Ross. Thank you so much, David. You come back and see us again.
Right on, man. Thanks.
Pleasure, buddy.